Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, I am honored to welcome two incredible guests, Bruce McIntyre and Kristin Rossi. Welcome. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. I want to just take a quick moment and have you each share a little bit of your backstory of how you came into, being where you're at today. And I want to start with Kristin.
All right. Well, prior to heading up the Michigan Parkinson Foundation, I worked for many years at the Alzheimer's Association of Greater Michigan. And that's where I really kind of got a handle on what is a neurodegenerative disease, how does it affect families, and what are some of the programs and services that we need to provide as an organization to make sure that families have what they need. So that's where I really kind of fell in love with the science behind it, with kind of what's happening in the brain to make these diseases happen and its impact on families. So the former CEO of the Michigan Parkinson Foundation gave me a call one day and she just said, "Hey, I'm about to retire. Is there any way you'd be interested in coming over to the Michigan Parkinson Foundation?" She saw kind of the synergy in programming, and immediately I said, "Yes, I'm interested." And since then, I've just absolutely fallen in love with the Parkinson's community. It's a really special and unique group of people that are very forward-thinking, very educated, very interested in learning, very interested in helping each other out. And it's just been a great transition from one to the other. And the two organizations, I should say too, the Alzheimer's Association and Michigan Parkinson Foundation, we've been able to work together a lot, partner on grants, partner on programs. So there's a lot more partnership, more collaboration that we can do. And I think having that background really helps.
Yeah. How long have you been with Michigan Parkinson's Foundation now, Kristin?
Just a little over 2 years now.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And next, let's go to Bruce.
Yeah. So, Lance, have you ever volunteered for something and wound up running the thing?
Many things.
That's how I did. That's how I got into this. Volunteered some years ago, wound up accidentally raising a lot of money and being on the board. But and so I've been doing this for 10 years now. And fortunately, we've been able to quadruple our funding and our programs across the state of Oklahoma. And I found that this is a group that I really love. When I started this, I had one family member who had Parkinson's and lived to about age 90. And then along the way, early on, my brother-in-law was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He lives in Colorado, where one of our other sister organizations is. But so it's been fantastic. Like Kristin, we have found that the Parkinson's people are curious, determined, resilient, and it really is a joy working to champion people who are living with a condition they didn't expect or ask for, and yet they're finding ways to live their best life even with Parkinson's, and that's what we help them do.
That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the mission, and I don't want to minimize that question because I'm sure the mission is to help support these families, but why is your mission so important?
Well, ours really comes back to, and Bruce, I'm sure yours is sort of similar in nature, educating and empowering. And we really like to focus on the people that this disease is affecting. So not only the person with Parkinson's, but also educating and empowering families, loved ones, and also very importantly, the healthcare community that supports them. So that's how we kind of set up our mission. It's threefold. It's trying to get at every person that this disease touches.
Yeah, there's probably not a day or a week that goes by that I don't say the mission of our organization, which is to inspire hope and transform life for Parkinson patients and families in Oklahoma. And the thing is, that's what we do. We can't fix it yet. There are great strides taking place in the world of Parkinson's, but we can help people manage it at this point. And so when we say inspire hope, even if I remind our staff and volunteers all the time, even if we can't do anything else, we can encourage people. They can walk back out the door better than they walked in the door, and to any of our programs all over the state. And truly, when we get in touch with people, again, we can't fix it, but their life can be better. And so truly, we can help transform their lives when they engage cognitively, physically, socially, all these ways, they do better.
Yeah. Now, I want to kind of go through the process because, we have a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers and followers, and there's not a lot of discussion nationally when I think of it anyways, and I could be absolutely wrong on this, but a lot of people are familiar with the Alzheimer's Association and, these different, groups and entities. You guys, Bruce, I introduced you as the CEO of the Oklahoma Parkinson's Alliance. I introduced Kristin as the Michigan Parkinson's Foundation. But a family is probably wondering, is there one entity that you guys all fall under? Because you said, your sister organizations. Is there one title, or is it a lot of different titles under one umbrella?
So it's kind of interesting. In the world of Alzheimer's, there's probably 5 times as many people as Parkinson's that have Alzheimer's, and there's really one big organization and several other national and other organizations for Alzheimer's. In Parkinson's, there are several national organizations, and then we're actually a part of a thing called the Independent Parkinson's Network. And so we have about 12 or 13 organizations across the country who really serve, and we're just a voluntary consortium of organizations that serve a state or a geographical area. So we're really grassroots on the ground. And so our organizations, we have, there's the Dallas Area Parkinson Society, there's Parkinson Association of San Diego, Parkinson Association of the Rockies. There's a group in the Northwest out of Seattle and one out of Pittsburgh and Houston, Michigan, Oklahoma, Alabama, the Carolinas, West Texas, Portland, Oregon. And so, but we all come together to help each other, encourage each other in best practices and to serve people well. And so our consortium serves about a third of the Parkinson's patients in the United States.
Wow. So when Kristin, do you get calls from people from, say, Ohio?
So we do, and we primarily serve the state of Michigan, but exactly as Bruce is saying, we're working with this consortium so that we have representation across the whole country that we can connect people with, because we are all doing very similar things. We have similar missions. Because I think the community thrives when we all work together. So yeah, we have different people everywhere that we kind of connect to. The other great thing about our programming is that we have a lot of virtual options, a lot of options that go on the road, a lot of resources that we're able to send anywhere. So we do our exercise classes. We have virtual exercise classes at 10 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and they're taught by physical therapists who specialize in Parkinson's disease. We have people on those classes from Canada to California. We had someone on last year. It was really exciting for everyone from the UK. So we're able to touch people even beyond Michigan as well. But we are working really hard with Independent Parkinson's Network to make sure we do have that network of support to connect people to and collaborate with.
Real quick before we go on, where for somebody watching or listening to this and they're interested in the virtual exercise, where do they go to sign up for that?
Absolutely. So they can go to our website. It's Parkinsons with an S, parkinsonsmi.org. And we have all kinds of resources on there. So they can find our exercise program. It's a one-time registration that they need to do. And then we have a directory of in-person exercise classes throughout the state as well. And we're even expanding our kind of programs in that arena as well. They can also find information on our education. We have over 200 videos on our YouTube channel just for exercise alone. And then we have our educational videos as well. We have caregiver training videos. We kind of separated on our website, like, here's what you need to know, here's what you need to grow, here's about the Michigan Parkinson Foundation, and here's how to get involved.
So I'm going to ask you now this, what's the name of the YouTube channel?
So it's youtube.com/Michigan Parkinson Foundation. So if you just type in Michigan Parkinson Foundation, you'll get there.
Wonderful. So Bruce, is Michigan doing it right? Are you kind of doing the same thing?
Oh yeah, no, and I mean, Michigan's a big state, and so honestly, they're probably one of the Michigan, Colorado. Those are two of the larger organizations in our consortium. So they have a lot of great resources. Also, we do in Oklahoma, we do a lot of hybrid programs as well, where people can join virtually. So OklahomaPA.org, and people can learn more about exercise support, all the different things there. Speech therapy, we do a ton of speech therapy. That's one of the symptoms people don't think about with Parkinson's, is that their swallowing and their voice volume is negatively affected. And so we support almost 30 speech groups that meet weekly. In fact, we'll have one meeting in about 30 minutes here in our office that is a hybrid group.
Well, and I know you just brought something up I wanted to talk to you about. When we had you on the Caregivers Journal, Denise and I think that day you were meeting, not maybe you, but you said down the hall you had a family coming in, and you guys offer some sort of caregiver or family support group also, right, at Oklahoma branch?
Yeah, we have several caregiver-specific groups across the state of Oklahoma, and one of those you could join virtually as well. And so those are really helpful because those are only the caregiver, the family member, spouse, child, whoever that wants to be in on that. Most of our normal support groups are educationally driven, and the patients are welcome. People living with Parkinson's and also the family members are welcome. But in the caregiver groups, it's only the family members that are a part of those.
I want to, before we move on, I'd love to get your guys' insight because you're a lot closer to Parkinson's than we are. A good friend of mine had recently met his hero, and that was Michael J. Fox. And he's dedicated his life to helping to raise awareness and finding a cure for Parkinson's. And what exactly, how does your work at the IPN, does it tie in at all with like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, or what does the Michael J. Fox Foundation do?
Yeah, Michael J. Fox focuses a lot on research. They are in it for the cure. And it's amazing the work that they're doing, both in terms of research and in terms of public policy. I think they're the best to kind of lead those efforts. So if someone calls us and they want to know more about research, about some of the different strides that are being made or how they can contribute to public policy, we always connect with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And what an inspiration. Michael J. Fox himself is just kind of has become the poster child for Parkinson's, and someone that everybody looks up to as a model. It's amazing. And what he did with his movie that was on Apple TV was fantastic as well, because it just really shows the progression of his disease over time. And I think helps give people strength.
Yeah. Would you say it's been a positive for the awareness for Parkinson's, having him, be so public about it?
Absolutely. Parkinson's, an interesting thing about Parkinson's is where with many diseases, people know what it is. Right. With Parkinson's, people say, oh yeah, that's the Michael J. Fox one, right? What is that anyway? And people couldn't really tell you what is Parkinson's. So he's been great. There at any given time, there's always at least 30 politicians, celebrities, people, that folks would know who they are, who are living with Parkinson's. But he has been the primary driver since the 90s. And they really have done great work, to get research off the ground to see if these studies are viable. And also, and so we've partnered with them. We partner with universities in Oklahoma to do therapeutic research. We've given money to Michael J. Fox for curative research, and they've been a great catalyst for research for a cure.
And I'll say too, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just anyone who's willing to speak up and speak out about the disease that's kind of in the public light is really helpful. Jimmy Choi from American Ninja Warrior is a great just beacon of strength for so many people, because he's an actual really big, strong man that does amazing things. Same with, Davis Finney, Brian Grant. It's just amazing when people are willing to come out of the shadows and give a face to the disease.
Yeah. Bruce, you said something I'd like you to kind of expand on, if you would. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. A lot of times people say, oh yeah, that's the Michael J. Fox, but they don't really understand. When somebody says to you, what is Parkinson's? How do you answer that?
Yeah, so it's the second most common neurodegenerative disease behind Alzheimer's. But what does it really mean? Usually think in terms of symptoms, like what does it really do? Well, number one, usually you find that folks, when they begin to see some symptoms, their dopamine is significantly depleted. They've maybe lost, 50 to 80% of their dopamine. And dopamine is that chemical that makes you feel like doing stuff. Mm-hmm. When you're running low on dopamine, you just don't feel like doing things. And so that's really a problem. The medicines try to get that circulating again and or replace what is lost. So in terms of symptoms, though, it's things like people may think of tremor. That's probably the most visible symptom that people might identify, but only 3/4 of people have tremor who have Parkinson's. So it's not always the case. But slowness of movement, rigidity and stiffness of movement, and balance issues, voice and swallowing issues, those kinds of things tend to be the primary symptoms that most people experience. And they're, at first they're kind of nuanced, but as time goes along, they become more pronounced. And often in a more typical case, someone might live, quite well for the first 10 years or so with Parkinson's before they really see significant decline. On the other hand, sometimes people do all the right things, and yet they have maybe an atypical form of Parkinson's, or genetically it just advances quickly. And so you can't always say that there's one path that your disease will take. It's very unique. But in a lot of cases, we find that people, it's not their quantity of life that's affected as much as it is their quality of life. And that's what all of our programs really try to help people with, is quality of life.
And Bruce is really hitting very well on the motor symptoms, kind of the things that you see, because it's a movement disorder. So those are the things you see outwardly. There's a lot of non-motor symptoms as well that people often don't think about, but that are just as impactful for that quality of life component. And that's anxiety, depression, apathy, sleep problems, constipation, the things that are sort of happening internally for people that we get calls about every day, the struggles that people are having just from a mental health perspective.
And that brings up an interesting point. Somebody watching or listening to this, they might be saying, oh my gosh, I've had anxiety, I've had trouble sleeping, and I've been constipated, and I haven't really felt like doing anything. I think I'm depressed. Do I have Parkinson's? Like, when should somebody really take it seriously and go get checked?
Yeah, I think when you see a combination of symptoms happening, if you have those things, it doesn't necessarily mean you have Parkinson's, but it might be time to ask the doctor that question and say, look, here's what I'm noticing. Do you think I have whatever? Often that they will then be referred to a neurologist, maybe a movement disorder specialist, and still technically it is a clinical diagnosis, though there are some tools now that through skin samples and other ways that maybe could help pinpoint, do you have Parkinson's or not? And so it's not always the easiest diagnosis to make, but especially early on. But if you're noticing a handful of symptoms, definitely put that on your list to ask your doctor.
So Michael J. Fox right now is 62 years old. And, I think it was Bruce mentioned, he's been going at this, awareness issue since the 90s. Would have put him maybe in his late 30s, mid 30s. Is he the exception or the rule for being diagnosed with Parkinson's? Is that young, or is there a rule to follow on age?
So he was young onset. Typically, someone is diagnosed more around age 62, or maybe their late 50s on average. But so he's in a smaller slice of the pie for young onset diagnoses. But a lot of times, young onset patients do live a very long time with Parkinson's, just because their lifespan expectancy would be so much different. But he's done rather well, and yet now in these later films and appearances, you definitely see it taking a toll now after 30 years. And so I think he's combining a lot more reality with his optimism, and yet he still remains a great beacon of resilience and hope for so many people.
And go ahead, Kristin.
Oh, I was just going to say it's more common to see people at that 62 and up range, but it's not unheard of to see the younger folks as well, the young onset. We had someone come in the office the other day. He's 52 now. He was diagnosed at 26. Wow. But I think the other thing is people in some ways are catching it earlier. Bruce, I think you said it's the second most common neurodegenerative disease behind Alzheimer's, and it is, but it's the quickest moving. It's even outpacing Alzheimer's in terms of how quickly it's growing. And I think a lot of different factors contribute to that, but unfortunately, we see the younger cases all the time.
Last question, and I don't mean to keep picking on Michael J. Fox here, but I think he's a prime example of celebrity status, wealth, lack thereof. Just like with dementia and other diseases, there's no discrimination. It can affect anybody. And, he's using his celebrity for, I think, good. But given how he has been so active in advocating and doing all of these different projects for awareness to Parkinson's, and you have seen, a progression in the disease, which I think comes naturally anyhow when you have that diagnosis, would it have been slower if he wasn't as active? Or is there any correlation to that?
So you can never truly say, sure. What would happen. But generally speaking, I'll say, having met thousands of Parkinson patients, the people who stay physically, cognitively, socially active, people who see the best doctors and optimize their medications, these people do better almost always, with the exception of some folks who, again, have an atypical form that it's beyond their control. But the things that when people get really active with the things that are within their control, like he has, and he's had, the benefit of the best, they almost always do better. Okay.
I just didn't know if it was something like, if my foot's sore and I have a big blister on it and I keep running, it's just going to make the blister worse. I didn't know if there was any correlation to that where, if you rest more and get more sleep, that it might help you, kind of, ward off the symptoms, more actively.
There's definitely a push to catch it sooner. I think Bruce mentioned the skin biopsy test and these other tests that you can kind of just see if you're on the same track as Parkinson's disease. And I think there's a lot you can do to intervene. And the biggest thing is exercise. It's the only thing, apart from medications, that's been shown to slow the progression of the disease. And that's why we talk up exercise so much in all of our organizations. And it's we have 4 key pillars, and exactly mirroring what Bruce is saying. We try to get people in at one of those pillars because they mimic every age and stage of the disease. It's community, that's socialization, bringing people together. We know that social isolation is bad for movement, bad for cognitive decline. We need to get people out and moving in support groups and things like that. It's exercise, it's education. And then finally, we also offer respite care assistance. And that's something I really want to put out to people today. We offer $2,000 per family per year in respite care assistance. And then we also do medication assistance because Parkinson's medication can get really steep. So $600 per family per year, as well as our mobility loan closet. So all of those things are just, to help with that progression of the disease because it is progressive.
Yeah, it's, we obviously, our professional jobs we have a home care company here in Michigan, and, we get families who are with the ALS Foundation, all these different organizations, and it's unbelievably effective and supportive for these families when they get that extra stipend from these foundations to help them cover the cost of the care. I wish care could be free for everybody, but the reality is right now, Medicare doesn't cover it, health insurance doesn't cover it, and unless you're one of the few that have long-term care insurance or you qualify through the VA for aid and attendance, you're paying for it out of pocket. And, a lot of these families, they can't afford that, And so thank you. I was going to go to that next about how can the IPN, we'll just say that, how can the IPN help support these family caregivers, because they're really the boots on the ground and the front lines for their loved ones dealing with it.
Yeah, and so from organization to organization, some of those resources are going to be different. But if you live in one of those areas, and again, the IPN, if you get in touch with anyone locally at one of those organizations, they are definitely going to be able to put either as an organization help with those things, or get you connected with organizations that help with those items. And so at parkinsonsnetwork.com, that's the IPN website. And there you can look at members, and you see around the country where these organizations are. And like I said, we're really grassroots, boots on the ground. I mean, we're the ones that we know people by their first names, and shake their hands and hug them and have time to talk with them and help get them connected to the resources that they need. And there's as you well know, there's so many things that are on the periphery of just trying to live life with any kind of chronic condition like Parkinson's. It affects so many things. And so sometimes you just need to talk to somebody. And one of our goals, actually Wendy in our office is usually the one that you're talking to on a free family consultation. And our goal is to give you, what are your 3 next right things to do? And that's a scalable question. If someone's been diagnosed for 2 weeks or 32 years, there's a next right thing to do. And that's our goal, is to help bring some clarity to your next best step.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's our hope that for all of us in IPN, that when someone is newly diagnosed, they give any one of us a call, because that's where the resources begin. Anyone can Google, I have Parkinson's, what do I do next? And you're going to get flooded with information. You're going to get flooded with things that aren't relevant for you yet, and maybe never relevant for you. And just don't hit on exactly what you need to build the support in your community. But that's something that each of us can provide.
Yeah. Talk about, I think it was Bruce that mentioned the virtual caregiver support groups. I think for a family, and, we experienced this with our company, we'd facilitate 5-6 different support groups throughout southeastern Michigan. And it wasn't specified for dementia or Parkinson's or cancer. It was just for caregivers, because I think there's a common theme and thread that goes throughout all caregivers. They're providing care for their loved one, though the details may be different. They're still a caregiver. And I think just knowing that there's other people that are going through what you're going through is very beneficial in and of itself. Something so simple, because their friends or social circle, maybe they haven't had to experience that for a parent or a spouse or even a child. But when you go to that support group, everybody there has experienced it. Talk about your caregiver support groups, because I think those are one of the most important things next to taking care of yourself that you can have,
Yeah. I kind of got into this in a strange way. My wife and I, she's had a different condition now for 20 years. And so we always say we've learned a lot about things we didn't want to know anything about. And 20 years ago, I will say that the awareness or even the term caregiver was a lot less recognizable. I think it was more common that people would say, good grief, we're dealing with this. I feel like I'm the only one in the world who's in this situation. Wonder if anyone else does this. It's like, oh yeah, maybe 50 million people, And so I think now the awareness is out there a little better, but still I think when it hits you, you may feel like you're the only one that's having this experience. And it's grief. It makes you mad. It makes you sad. It's all these things, guilty, all that. You go through all these things, and it's not wrong to go through these things. It's problematic to get stuck in some of those. And that's where a caregiver support group, and like I say, a lot of ours really start out, they're educationally driven. So there's always a topic. There's something we're learning, and the conversation flows around that. But also in the course of a meeting, someone might ask about anything. And there are people there with 2 years experience and 22 years experience. And you don't always learn the most important thing from the person leading the session. Sometimes it's the person you're sitting next to or the person you're chatting with while the session is going on, but connection is so important for family members, because you get hit from every side. You can become depleted. And what these groups do is they normalize the experience. People feel weird as caregivers, and that's one reason we have only caregivers in these meetings, not the patient, because there are things they may say in a caregiver meeting that they would never say in front of their loved one. And they're not bad for thinking or saying those things, but sometimes you need to get it out to process it, and to do as well as you can do in the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia Wall on our team, she's our director of education, and she runs the Livonia support group, actually, Lance, so right in your neighborhood.
Road.
And she has one of the biggest support groups in the state. She does the support group for people with Parkinson's and the caregiver. That's most of what they do all year round. And then 2 times a year, she breaks it up. So people go into separate rooms and just can kind of let it out. They can, relate, just as Bruce is saying, to the people sitting right next to them. They can, vent about the things that are happening specifically to them. And then we do have groups throughout the state as well that are caregiver only support groups. So a lot of the support groups integrate care partners and the person with Parkinson's as well. And then we do something separate for them in addition to that. And we have, I think we're up to 76 support groups across Michigan's 83 counties. So we're really well represented in terms of what we have in each community for people. It's just a really, really great showing of support. And we at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation make sure that we're providing those speaker lists, that we're going to each of those support groups and providing support to them. And the other thing we offer, because a lot of times when you talk to people who are newly diagnosed, they're not quite ready for a support group yet, or they'll go to one and just say, that's not me, or I'm not there yet. So we also created a mentorship program as well. And that's a one-on-one program that we actually borrowed from our friends through IPN at the San Diego chapter. And we're up to 10 mentors right now, and I think probably about 20 mentees at this point. And we categorize it as well. So we give people tags based on their experience. We have a couple of people who are veterans. So they have veteran with Parkinson's disease, newly diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, just a care partner themselves. Adult children of someone with Parkinson's, women with Parkinson's, young onset. We give them all these categories so that people can look at the mentor site and kind of identify with someone and say, I'm going to connect with no one else. I'm going to connect with this person that has a similar background or experience to me. And that's what we're after, all of us. I think, Bruce, you said it perfectly when you just said people are looking for connection. So however we can provide that connection for people, whether it's through a support group, mentorship, oftentimes people really latch on to their exercise instructor or their movement disorder specialist, whoever it is in their world, that's kind of the key to learning more, staying active, and staying educated and curious. That's often the key that we're looking for, the connection point that we're looking for.
That's amazing. 76 counties, Kristin.
It's 76 support groups across 83 counties. Yeah.
All right. That's still that's impressive.
Yeah. No, really, really proud of that. And we have a great team that's managing.
Just not that it matters, but Alzheimer's Association, how many do they have in Michigan?
Oh boy, they are well represented as well. I have to say though that I believe we have more.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're doing a great job. They're getting into a lot of senior living communities, getting volunteers more involved so that they can be better represented throughout the state.
Yeah. And regardless, all these organizations are doing great work that's so desperately needed. If I asked each of you to kind of dispel one myth that you hear most commonly brought to you from a new family that's been diagnosed with Parkinson's, or that you just hear in the media or wherever you hear it, what's the one that gets you the most frustrated that you want to dispel? I'll start with Bruce.
Well, I guess it's just this notion that when you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
You're done. You can't work. You can't be involved. Untrue. There's a lot of life to live with Parkinson's. Now, when someone first gets diagnosed, that's what you're afraid of when you get diagnosed with a disease of any type. You're like, should I start my bucket list? Is it curtains for me? Am I done? And no, you're not done. There's a lot of life to live. And so typically in most cases, and so that's what I would say. If you've been diagnosed, hey, recrank the living. I mean, let's get the living. And that's the design of all of our programs. We're trying to help you stay vibrant.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How about you, Kristin?
So I can think of so many things that our community kind of brings to the table that we're constantly trying to dispel, what Bruce mentioned as well. But I think I'm going to actually flip my lens a little bit. And there are myths that the outside community holds of people with Parkinson's that I'd love for them to become better educated on. We were at a conference recently, and I had a woman come up to me and say that she used one of our cards. So we have these cards that say, I am not intoxicated. I am a person with Parkinson's. It makes me shake or have erratic movements at times. On the flip side is, in case of emergency, I have this person listed. And she said, so I brought one of your cards to Trader Joe's because I went in there and I noticed that the staff was looking at me. They thought that I was either drunk or on drugs or something like that. And it was just gnawing at me. And I took your card, I pulled the manager aside, and I just said, listen, I know what's going on here, but I want to take this opportunity to educate you about what's going on with me. And when I come into your store, how I feel like I'm being treated or being looked at. And it was a great time for the two to come together. She said she ended up in tears. The manager ended up in tears. She's never had that feeling in Trader Joe's before. So she really does believe that they had, a staff huddle up or a meeting just to talk about, maybe this is what someone with Parkinson's looks like or sounds like. So I think a lot of those myths are from the outside community. And I want people's movements to be normalized, some of what they're going through to be normalized, and people to be a little bit more accepting of what they're seeing from an overall disability standpoint, but definitely with people with Parkinson's.
That's a great point. For me, it's really, people think Parkinson's is dementia. They think if you have Parkinson's, you automatically have dementia, or if you have dementia, you have Parkinson's. And there is, some form where you can have dementia related Parkinson's, or Parkinson's related dementia, but it's not a one size fits all. And it's the same with dementia. So many families think, well, my grandmother has Alzheimer's, but she doesn't have dementia. And it's like, no, you got that backwards. You can have dementia and not have Alzheimer's, but you can't have Alzheimer's and not have dementia. But I just think, like the work you guys are doing at your chapters or your organizations and at the IPN, it's helping to just raise the awareness to, the outside world who's maybe not touched by it, but is observing it, and just so that they're better educated. We had a gentleman on not too long ago from Australia, and he was doing they call it civil there, but here would be society. He was doing civil awareness, where he was going into businesses and educating and training the staff on signs and symptoms to look out for dementia, because a lady had died in the mall there because they thought she was, just kind of crazy or on drugs, and they just shoot her out of the store, and she was found in a stairwell a few days later, dead. And if that employee had known what to look for, maybe that would not have been the case, or maybe it would have been. But, just helping to raise awareness on Parkinson's, I think, is crucial, because like you said, you could maybe mistakenly, uneducatedly think somebody is drunk or inebriated, and, you're trying to get away from them, and that person's needing help. I was hit by a gentleman who had Parkinson's when I was 18 years old. He rear-ended my truck, brand new truck, just leased it. And I was so happy with that truck. And all of a sudden I'm pulling into a Dairy Mart, and slams right in the back of me. And, I was fine. The truck bumper was bent, nothing big. I get out, he gets out, and he is shaking, I say violently, because it was like uncontrollable shaking. I'm scared he's having a heart attack, or, I'm 18. I didn't know any better. Sure. We called the police, and the police comes over and says, well, he says he has Parkinson's, so we're going to let him go. And I was concerned for the gentleman, because he was shaking so uncontrollably, he couldn't even open the door. The officer had to open the door for him. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't the officer help him get home safely? Because he might do the same thing at the next red light, And I just think even for our police force and our first responders, having a better awareness of, things to look out for could minimize, maybe a bad situation.
100%.
Yeah. And we do a lot of training for all kinds of groups. And I would say all those groups are very receptive. Everyone is interested, asks great questions, wants to learn. But from the starting line, most people don't know anything about Parkinson's. And certainly when people are diagnosed, they know nothing, and so we're constantly adding tools to people's toolboxes of what to know, how to deal, how to live with Parkinson's. And there are just so many facets that are affected.
Absolutely. Kristin?
We say if you've met one person with Parkinson's, you've met one person with Parkinson's. And I'm sure the same could be said for other disease states as well. But it can look a lot of different ways. But if you can approach a situation, and it's okay to have that initial thought, is that person drunk? Is that person on drugs? That's how you keep yourself safe and your guard up. And that's okay. But maybe moving to the next thought being, you know what, maybe they have some sort of complication, some sort of disease, some sort of something that's making them act that way. That's even a great start, just to have your mind go there.
Absolutely. In closing, I want to ask you guys each a quick question. If you could make one decision and it would be implemented nationally for Parkinson's, Bruce, what would be your decision? What would you want to see implemented?
Well, I will tell you what, it is being implemented. So in December, there's the Ending Parkinson's legislation, and this was a numerous groups, not just one organization that drove this, that was unanimously passed by the House of Representatives in December, and then has been approved by the Senate just last week. And so this kind of takes it all to the next level. It's not just Michael J. Fox funding to get studies off the ground, or not just what can everybody do independently, but it kind of brings about a whole new government level of funding and coordination. That's kind of a whole different thing. So we as of last week, we're entering a new era in the world of Parkinson's. I don't know that that's going to result in a game changer right away. It might, but it certainly is going to elevate the awareness, the resources, the research, all that to a new level that it's never been at before for Parkinson's.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say the bill, and yeah, that's incredible. And I'm just maybe being a little jaded. I wonder though, like, why did it take so long, right? But it doesn't matter. It's here now, so we just look forward. But thank you for that. How about you, Kristin?
Okay, so Bruce definitely took mine. The National Plan to End Parkinson's is a great step in the right direction. I guess the other decision I would make is to, I'm just going to be honest, I would ban paraquat and any other pesticides that have been shown to have a direct link to Parkinson's and other neurological disorders. Parkinson's is on the rise, like I said, the fastest growing neurological disease. And I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. We're living longer. Genetics absolutely plays a role, but I don't think we can ignore the fact that the environment and what we're putting into the environment also plays a role. So that's something we are looking at more just for discussion groups at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. There's a great book called Ending Parkinson's Disease by Ray Dorsey, Mike Oken, and Bastian Bloom that kind of explores that a little bit more. And we're trying to get any of those guys to come speak at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation because it is a topic that's very relevant right now and that our community is telling us that they want more information about.
That's incredible. All right, last question for each of you. If someone listening or watching right now is either newly diagnosed or maybe they've been diagnosed 10 plus years ago, the answer may be different for each of them, but what would be your number one recommendation for them? I'll go with you, Kristin.
Okay, come to our PD 101 class. It's kind of our Parkinson's orientation, and we encourage people to come to that orientation when they are newly diagnosed or just if they've never gotten the information. Because a lot of people can sit in denial for a good number of years, decade or more. That's not atypical. So please come to our Parkinson's orientation. We really set the stage for this is what the disease is. This is how it's managed. This is how you build your care team. And this is how the Michigan Parkinson Foundation is here for you. And it's taught by, again, our Director of Education, the wonderful Julia Wall. So we can do it virtually. We can do it in person. We can go on the road. We can do it one-on-one for families. But the PD 101 class is a great start.
Wonderful. How about for you, Bruce?
Yeah, I would say, I say this to people all the time because I realize it takes a lot of courage to make the first phone call, to send the first email, to make the first social media comment, or to reach out for the first time. And I tell people I appreciate your courage in that. I know it's not always easy to do that, but that's often where it starts. And usually, so I would encourage you, if you're in Oklahoma, go to oklahomapa.org. We're not that scary. We're here to help. I would say if you live anywhere around the country, certainly you know how to connect with Kristin now in Michigan, parkinsonsnetwork.com, parkinsonsnetwork.com. Look at the members. If there's one in your state, click on that, just reach out. And most likely we are going to then connect you to like a Parkinson's 101 class, or maybe it's support or exercise or a better doctor or something like that. But you'll be able to there are plenty of people. We're here to help you take the next right step.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Bruce, thank you so much. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I loved how you said, you know everybody by first name. And I think that's so important in healthcare in general, where you're not just a number, you're not just kind of being herded in. And I think, especially in a time like that, when you're diagnosed with something like Parkinson's, or maybe it's your husband was diagnosed and you're reaching out for help, people need that extra comfort and sense of familiarity by knowing the people actually are hearing them and knowing who they are. So thank you both so much for what you're doing. We applaud you, and we'll have all the stuff in the show notes as well as up on the screen during the video. And I just thank you both so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to our friends, Kristin Rossi and Bruce McIntyre, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.